president of a company called Gumbo Academy. And what I do is keep kids out of prison with a chess. You probably are not probably having a little difficulty hearing me because we're outside of the 77th police station. And I'm here today to talk with Mrs. Regina Scott, the first black woman to be promoted to the position of deputy chief. I did another interview with her some time back, and you probably won't recognize me because at that time I had on my old jail outfit. I had this outfit on here, so maybe you might remember if I had this. I just want to say that since then I got out on parole, so I took my gate money and bought me a couple of suits, so I'm hopefully looking a little better than I did before. But anyway, the reason that I'm here today is, as many of you may or may not know, I had planned to give Mrs. Scott and Mrs. Barbara Morrison a ceremony in the year 2019. And what happened was we didn't have the ceremony because the pandemic. The pandemic has put a lot of dampers and a lot of... And here is the, can we get set up? Here is the flyer that we had issued out and circulated to talk about the ceremony that we was going to have in 2019. But unfortunately, like I said, the pandemic came and we didn't have it. So what I'm here today to do is hopefully try and persuade Mrs. Scott to come to this ceremony, because we're going to have the same ceremony next year on April 17th, 2022. It's been 2 years since we attempted to have the ceremony before that. And I'm hoping, and not only I'm hoping, but there are a lot of people who were very anxious to see Mrs. Scott, to get a close-up look at a very popular, professional, well-respected lady. So today we're going to do some persuasions and talk to her just in the hope that she will consider coming to this event along with Barbara Morrison, and we hope that you come out there to this event. It'll be on April 17th, 2022. So we will see during this interview whether or not Mrs. Scott will commit. And if she does commit, then we're going to start selling tickets. We're going to start circulating flyers and information to let you know that we're on and cracking. Again, so with that said, come on inside, and hopefully we'll be talking to Mrs. Scott and we'll get an inside look at not only how much she's done since 2019, but will she be willing to come to our ceremony on the 17th of April 2022. Come on in. Hello everybody, I am ecstatic to be sitting here once again with my chess buddy, who, you know, I didn't forget that she whooped me, you know what I'm saying, but we don't have time to go into all that. Mrs. Scott, I think, you know, there's so much to say, and let me explain real quickly why I'm here. As many of you may know, that we intended to have a ceremony in honor of Mrs. Scott and Barbara Morrison back in the year 2019.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the pandemic came, and it affected, you know, just about everybody. Can't even think of anyone that didn't affect. And unfortunately, we were unable to continue having the ceremony. We were a few days away from the ceremony. So I think we have a shot of that. But if we don't have a shot of that, you want to get a close-up on this thing? Well, we have it. We'll talk, you know, we have it. We have a shot of this, both the date that we were going to have it and this new date. And so we're here in the hope that Mrs. Scott, Chief Scott, will consider coming to the ceremony that we have planned for April 17th of next year. Now she hasn't committed because she's saying, you know, in fact she's retiring, so we're gonna miss her, you know, and which brings me to a question. And I, you know, I real briefly want to ask her this. I was in front of a judge, and she was reading my record, you know. And I said, Your Honor, could I say something? And she said, yes, what would you like to say, Mr. Knapp? I said, well, all you have in front of you, ma'am, is, you know, my criminal record. And there's nothing in front of you that shows some of the good things that I've done. You know, so, it's, you know, and that's kind of unfortunate because you don't really know, you know, any of the good things I've done. And she said, really? She said, well, tell me something about the good things you've done.
Okay.
You know, so I did, and she was kind of impressed. So I'm saying that to say this, that we as a people, and I'm not just talking about black people, we don't necessarily like the police department. I mean, the great majority of us, like the judge in the courtroom, we only see the, you know, the bad stuff. We don't get a chance to see some of the things that they do in terms of trying to make the community better. So I'm saying that to say, I hope that Mrs. Scott will come to this ceremony so that she can talk real briefly about some of the things she's done that have been good for the community that we may not know she has been behind these kind of actions. So with that said, tell us a little bit about something. You're going to be retired. What are the things you're leaving us with that you've made some changes with that you feel has made, I know it's a big question.
You know, and it is, because, you know, I think when I came on the police department, first of all, I came on because it was a lawsuit, because there weren't many of us on, and they made the process for coming in, made it almost impossible for people of color to come on, just on ways that they were able to kind of eliminate you. So then there came this lawsuit, which became a consent decree, and then they started to bring in more women. The consent decree mandated that they bring in more women. The consent decree mandated that they brought in more people of color.
When you say the consent decree, what do you mean when you say the
So there was...
what's the consent decree?
So the consent decree is really when the state or the federal government comes in and says that you have practices or past practices that we term to be discriminatory. Be it the way you hire, be it the way you promote, be it the way you make your selection process, and that there was a consent decree and they mandated certain things within the department. You no longer could have these, I'd say, these legalized discrimination rules or policies that would eliminate people that normally didn't look like the community that they serve to be on the police department. So at that time, they had a lawsuit. One of the things that the lawsuit did is that they said that women could only work certain positions, and it said that women could only work, they could only rise to the rank of a sergeant. So the lawsuit came in and eliminated that. They also said that African Americans could only work with other African Americans, and that we can only work in certain parts of the city. And part of that consent decree came through, and it eliminated that. It also eliminated the process on how you promote. So although they were allowing us to kind of come on the police department, but when you wanted to move in the ranks of supervisory and in positions of power and where you had influence, you saw less and less of people of color and less of women. So part of the consent decree mandated that the police department take a look at that and change the DNA and dynamics of what LAPD did way back in the 80s when I came on the police department.
Oh, okay, great. You know, yeah, you know, and I'm sure that's probably the tip of the iceberg in terms of, you know, what the legacy. You know, I'm just thinking that and hoping that whoever, you know, replaces you, which is another story about you really won't find people with the same kind of, you know, mindset that I discovered you had when we had that first interview. But I do hope that whoever picks up the baton, so to speak, will continue to carry on, you know, the legacy that you're going to leave behind in terms of, you know, the good thing. Speaking personally, when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
you, first of all, you wasn't driving a bus.
Mm-hmm.
You wasn't a postman.
Right.
You certainly wasn't a cop.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You certainly wasn't a cop. And most of all, it was unthinkable that you could consider
Mm-hmm.
running for president.
Oh my God, yes. Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of women, you have come almost full circle around here. You know, not only is there, have you overcome discrimination in certain areas, you know, as you being a veteran service, and that was another obstacle that you had to, you know, overcome that, you know, and there were many women before you that have set the stage for, you know, making a lot of women don't really know the how you say the pave that was set, the track record, so to speak, of other women, making it, you know, less more fortunate for those that are
Correct.
getting it. You know what I'm saying? The women that's coming into the police
Right.
force, they're coming in, you know, not knowing the tremendous obstacles that you, other women, and not just black women,
Mm-hmm.
women period, because there was, you know, there's this thing, and there will always be this thing that, you know, even though women have become part of the law enforcement, there's still a concern about, you know, when we get in some trouble, can she handle the trouble? Can she respond to the kind of situations that arise that normally, you know, they've only been dealt with on the man's side. So with all that said, I said, you know, so I just take off my hat to you. In fact, I just want to say this, that during the plans to have, to honor Mrs. Scott and Mrs. Morrison, Barbara Morrison, there was an individual that was really anxious to see Mrs. Scott. And, you know, he was kind of like really unhappy that the ceremony had to be postponed. And so he's a young artist who came up to me and asked me what was going to go on. And I said, well, you know, I really can't tell you how long this is going to last or what's going to happen, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like it's a temperature reading. We still, you know, are waiting for the schools and people, you know, the city, the mayor and all of them to decide what's going to happen to everybody. And so he said, well, you know, I'm going to do a picture of her. And I said, you know, what kind of picture? He said, a portrait. I said, Miss Scott. He said, with Mrs. Scott and Mrs. Morrison. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And he was an upcoming artist. Now, he did a great, in my personal opinion, he did a great job because all he had to work with was a photograph he got from off his phone.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And a picture, some background information on his phone about Barbara Morrison. And so in his head, he put together Mrs. Scott and Mrs. Morrison, and here is the picture, which we are going to give Mrs. Scott, you know, at the conclusion of this interview, because this is something that I thought, now this guy's not Rembrandt,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought it was just a great, you know, picture because we wanted to honor two women that I felt have made a tremendously big difference here in Los Angeles, California. You know, Mrs. Scott, Regina Scott, with her, you know, law enforcement changes. Barbara Morrison, there are no words to describe Mrs. Morrison, who I have done an interview too, so he's going to show an interview of Mrs. Morrison and Mrs. Scott. Mrs. Morrison is, you know, world-renowned jazz singer, but more importantly, she's given to the community. She has a jazz and blues museum. She does karaoke. She has her theater open for other organizations to present, ceremonies and parties and all that other stuff at a very cheap price. You know, so she's constantly giving back to the community. So we're hoping, once again, we're hoping that Mrs. Scott will consider this upcoming event of April 17th. We're going to stay in touch with her. She's retiring in a couple of weeks, right?
I retired December the 10th. I know, 34 and a half
December
years.
10th. So we're going to zoom in on like December the 5th and find out if she can be available. I'm willing. Wherever she goes, I'm willing to pay the bus fare. Be sure to get on the bus now, okay? Don't get on the plane, because then I'll be back in the penitentiary trying to get money to get you over. But, you know, we don't have a problem trying to pay for or assist you.
It's financially, that's not an issue. So my issue is my plan and my retirement, and it's right at the end of the month, and we were going to be out of country. So I'll have to see what that is. We were leaving probably right around February, be out of country, Costa Rica. That was the plan.
And you was going to stay a while?
For about a couple of months, and then I have to be in Pennsylvania. I want to say maybe in the end of May, somewhere around that time. I have to come back for a new day.
So are you ever coming back?
You know what? I am. I just don't know what that time period is. You know, it's retirement, so the whole point of retirement. But you know, I'm in school right now, so one of the things I need to finish up my doctorate degree. So I was coming back in May, because that's when I have to do my final dissertation and go before my board and support my thesis.
That'd be a heck of a title. You know, we have to call you Chief Dr. Scott, or Dr. Chief Scott.
Chief
You know what I'm saying?
Dr. Scott, yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's consider this. Let's consider that if all goes well, and we stay in contact, which I'm hoping we stay in contact, we'll find a date next year. It doesn't have to be locked in on the 17th of April.
Okay.
We will, I will campaign in the hope that this can happen. But if it cannot happen, at least I want to be comfortable with the idea that we can do something.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? We could do something before the year is out. So I hear your phone ringing.
Sorry.
That's necessary. Well, that might be our cue.
Sorry about that.
That might be our cue. Well, that's all right. That might be our cue to say, you know what? We once again.
Well, can I just say one thing?
Please.
You know, when we first met, and you were talking about chess, and you were talking about the kids, I just want to thank you for not giving up and staying focused. I think anytime you can reach a kid, and you can kind of combine our two worlds, law enforcement and the community together, anyone who's willing to continue that focus, it is truly a pillar in the community. And so I just wanted to just make sure I took a moment to thank you. Thank you for our friendship and our relationship. Thank you for always, keeping your moral compass always pointing towards north, and then seeing where the problem is, and instead of being part of the problem, you really have come up with a solution. So hopefully, we get back to bridging that gap between law enforcement and changing the hearts and minds of our officers. I think part of where our officers are, they think that they have to come into a community and fix it. And so what we've been trying to do is you don't need to fix the community, you just need to be part of the guardian to take care of the community. And so, but I just want to just really thank you for what you do, and thank you for the work that you do and the vision that you have had.
It's interesting that you say that, because in 2019 when we first met, my company was called Gumbo Associates. And what I did is I decided to change associates to academy. Because not only was it more educational, but I have a curriculum and a chess program that deals with a little bit of what I call special instructions. We have elevated. Well, I've always had this in mind, but my company has elevated to the position and point whereas we want to teach kids how to use the game
Exactly.
to become successful. Now there are a lot of chess programs out there that is, saying, okay, well, we got life skills and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what gives me the advantage
Mm-hmm.
is I've been to prison,
Right.
been on drugs,
Mm-hmm.
been there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So a
So
lot of
you
stuff
got that
I'm
credibility.
exactly, a lot of things that I'm talking about are from personal experience, and many of these programs that are in existence and very good. There's a guy
Mhm.
named Damian Fletcher. I know him personally, doing a fabulous job of doing a chess program. I think what makes the difference, and I'm not saying I'm better than him, I'm saying that the difference between Damian and myself is
Mhm.
that I have years, I could be Damian's father,
Right.
and I'm using my lifelong experiences to tell kids that if there's anything that I wish I could, help improve, and I want you to prove, is my ability to learn how to stop
Mm-hmm.
and think.
Right. Make
Those
good
two
decisions.
things, if I could just acquire
Mm-hmm.
that one small thing, because I can tell you, I could write a book about all the times I've done something,
And then
said
just
something, and then regretted it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
When we teach our cops, what you do is you take a moment of pause.
right.
And sometimes it's just a breath. Sometimes it's just in the middle of what you think you're gonna do. Just take a pause. We're not telling you to close your
Right.
eyes and
Take
and just take a moment
Breathe.
of pause, right? And
Breathe.
then we ask them to kind of visualize when you're done with your action. Are you going to be proud that it's going to be published in the newspaper, right? Are you going to be proud that your daughter and your son and your wife is going to see what you are about to do in the newspaper? Will you still be proud when your boss sees it and it's published in the newspaper? So take a pause and
Reflect.
just take a moment. That's all we're asked. Take a moment and reflect the consequences of your actions today and imagine it in the newspaper, and you tell me how proud you are. And so I think you are absolutely right. I think we don't teach our kids, we tell our kids what to do, but we don't teach them how to regulate emotions. We don't teach that. And I think for young people, it is they act on emotions, and you got to teach them emotional intelligence and how to self-regulate. And I think that's what your program does far beyond most others.
Thank
It's
you.
just
Well, we're trying. I've got a great cast of players in the organization. Keisha, Lloyd, Dario, Video. You know what I mean? I got people that you don't get they don't get you.
Mhm.
You don't get to see them. But they, I wouldn't be where I'm at had I not had the kind of assistance and help from some people who, when we first started out, were committed. They were volunteers. You know what I'm saying? And they're still volunteering. So I can't be more proud. I can't be more happier. We're not rich, but we are making a difference. And we just finished having an event in October. We had a chess event in October doing video. So what we want to do now is put the program on video, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, for free, to let people see and get the experience of the curriculum that we had when we didn't have the pandemic. So we're trying to work in conjunction with the seriousness and the crisis. So that's what we're doing now. We're trying to get some donations, contributions, what have you, and we're nonprofit, and we're hoping that we can find a place. We have a place, but we need to find a place where we can have people come different times, kids, and just do the program.
Right.
So we're launching that kind of a program. Yes.
Look at Parks and Recs. They especially in our community. I mean, we went 14 years without a swimming pool. I mean, kids had to go any place else to swim but in their own community. They have now revitalized all of our rec centers. So the downtime, if you want to talk about what good came out of the pandemic, it gave our community an opportunity to kind of heal itself, to put things in for kids that they didn't used to. Like before, you went to the basketball court, it was just a hoop, no net. Now they have programming, and like I said, they have swimming pools. So one of the things that should be in there should be your gumbo academy.
Well, we know, funny you saying that. I just put in a application with the park, and it's called Ladera Park, over there on Slauson and Overhill, not far from Slauson, Overhill. And I have one foot in because as a vendor, I have a license, so they have accepted the vending part. What I need to do now is file another application for them to understand that I want to bring a program into Ladera Park and maybe change my time date, because they're saying, well, right now we're not doing any afternoon programs. So I'm saying, well, let's do a evening program, or let's do a morning program, or let's do a Saturday program, but let's do a program. You know what I'm saying? And we can use your park. So then there's another glitch to this. If I come in as a volunteer, if I say to Ladera Park, I want to be a volunteer, right, and give them my credentials and come in as a volunteer, then I can shift gears and say, well, as a volunteer, I want to bring in this program. So a couple of ways, well, I'm saying there's a couple of ways we're trying to approach the parks and the stuff. And so that was one of the things that
well, there's a lot of need in this community, so however you do it, through the councilman, through your neighborhood council, however you do it, just get in. You got community build, you got a coalition of color. There's a lot of work. You got the Brotherhood Crusades. You've got the Watch Gang Task Force.
There's a lot of venues.
There's a lot of stakeholders that are looking for programming for kids.
We're on our way. We're trying. Once again, can't say enough, Mrs. Scott. Thank you for this thing. We're going to be in contact with her. We're going to let our audience out there know when we're going to have this ceremony. At some point, and hopefully by next year, before the new year's out or whatever, we certainly just want to honor Miss, have her come by, say a few words, and leave us with the idea that somebody she's given the baton to will definitely carry on the kind of good things she's done, and so we don't want to forget. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like when Martin Luther King died, the movement kind of died.
I think it shifted, and people wanted to go a different direction, and then it shifted a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, with that said, we want to say, Ms. Scott, thank you once again.
Nope, I appreciate you. Like I said,
thank you once again.
It's been a while.
And we'll be looking forward to seeing her again, and looking forward to hopefully seeing the Gumbo Academy now. Not the Gumbo Associates, but the Gumbo Academy. With that said, I want to say goodbye to everybody out there, and I'm looking to kick her butt when she does start playing chess again, because I didn't like that loss that I took, on the last interview. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting back at the time.
We can do it on the internet. So.
Oh, that's right too.
Exactly, we can play on the internet.
So we'll be
at you. By the beach drinking a Mai Tai. We can come up and we can play. Yeah,
that's great. That's great. With that, we just want to say goodbye out there, everybody.
Thank you
and
for having me.
Thanks again, Mr. Scott.